Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Toby.
And this is the Whispering Woods podcast. This episode is all about...
Smurl family haunted.
Yeah, have you heard of it?
Nah.
This is a pretty good story, I must say. But first of all, we have a new patron.
Catnip H.
Hi, Catnip H. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. I also want to give a quick shout out as well to Alan, who sent a lovely message. Thanks, Alan. It was lovely.
Yeah, cheers, Alan.
If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where for £2.50 a month you can listen completely ad-free, and for £4.50 a month you can listen to this podcast and our other podcast, Obscurata. And just quickly on Obscurata, there's a really interesting episode coming up on Tuesday, and I've never heard of it before, but it's really interesting. You can also support the podcast as we are now on Apple Premium, where for $4.99 you can listen to this podcast and Obscurata, again, absolutely ad-free. Right, let's get on with this. Are you ready for the story?
Yes, I am.
Tonight we venture into the heart of a quiet Pennsylvanian town, where an ordinary family claims to have lived through an extraordinary nightmare. This is the story of the Smurl haunting, a case of alleged demonic terror that spanned over a decade, from the mid-1970s to the late 1980s, in a modest duplex on Chase Street in West Pittston. Jack and Janet Smurl and their family endured bizarre phenomena. Their claims of a demon inhabiting their home gained widespread media attention and drew in both believers and skeptics. West Pittston is a small, unassuming town in Pennsylvania. Not the sort of place you'd expect to become famous for a haunting. In 1973, after Hurricane Agnes ravaged the region, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a double-block duplex at 330 Chase Street to rebuild their lives. On one side lived Jack and Janet with their young daughters, and later newborn twin girls. On the other side, Jack's parents, John and Mary Smurl. They were a devout Catholic family, church-going, community-orientated, hoping to make a happy home in this middle-class neighbourhood. For a while, life on Chase Street was perfectly normal. But then the strange little incidents began. At first, they were easy to dismiss. Tools went missing, only to turn up later in odd places. Doors opened and closed on their own, and an empty toilet would flush itself spontaneously. The family would sometimes hear unexplained footsteps and faint knocking in the walls. These occurrences were unsettling, but sporadic. The Smurls chalked it up to the quirks of an old house or their imagination. If only it stopped there. As months turned to years, the eerie activity slowly escalated. Janet would scrub away a stain on the wall, repainting it, only to have the old stain reappear through fresh paint, as if mocking her efforts. On one occasion, kitchen appliances caught fire despite being unplugged, filling the house with acrid smoke. More and more, an oppressive atmosphere seemed to be taking hold in the home. The family began noticing foul odours wafting through the house, disgusting smells that would rise up suddenly and then vanish without a trace, with no source to be found. They checked all the plumbing and vents, but everything was in order. Still, the odours came. Despite these disturbances, the Smurls tried to maintain a normal life. Through the late 1970s and into the 1980s, Jack worked his job and even coached his daughter's softball team. and Janet volunteered in the community. They brought their faith to bear as well, praying and attending Mass regularly, hoping that whatever bump in the night was bothering them would fade away. But the opposite happened. The phenomena grew more intense with each passing year. By the mid-1980s, the Smurl family's home had turned into what they described as a personal hell. Jack's mother, Mary, suffered a heart attack during this period, a tragedy that seemed to coincide with a spike in the house's strange activity. Family members reported seeing ominous black masses form in mid-air and float from room to room. Amorphous dark shapes that radiated a sense of menace. With the household on edge, even the sounds in the home took on a sinister character. Both Janet and Mary began hearing phantom voices. Janet would hear her mother-in-law calling her name when Mary wasn't doing so, and Mary would swear she heard Janet and Jack in a furious, curse-laden argument, only to find the house quiet and the couple peacefully doing something else. It was as if something mimicked their voices to sow confusion and fear. Soon the unseen entity turned violent. The physical attack started gradually and then escalated. The family frequently heard loud thumps and blood-curdling screams through the house at all hours, along with bizarre pig-like grunting sounds, followed by an overwhelming, horrible stench with no clear origin. These sounds would start and stop abruptly, keeping the family on edge through many sleepless nights. Neighbours even reported hearing strange screams coming from the house when no one was home. Objects began moving on their own. Furniture would shake and items on shelves would fall off, with no one near them. A heavy light fixture swayed and ripped out of the ceiling, crashing down and nearly injuring one of the Smurl daughters who was sitting below. She dodged away with only inches to spare. The family dog, a 75-pound German Shepherd, was picked up by an invisible force and thrown against a wall in front of everyone. One of the young daughters was shoved down the basement stairs by something invisible, tumbling to the bottom in tears. Jack and Janet themselves were not spared. Jack reported that on several occasions he was dragged out of bed and down onto the floor by an unseen force while praying the rosary, and beaten by invisible hands that left him bruised. He also said the entity bit his ear once, drawing blood. Janet too experienced terrifying close encounters. She later recounted being lifted off her bed by an invisible presence and hurled across the room as her children watched in horror. By 1985, it was clear to the Smurls that whatever was haunting their house was not a mere ghost looking for attention. In their eyes, it was something demonic and intent on harm. Jack, previously a skeptic, was stunned by what they were going through. Up until a year ago, I thought these types of things only happened in movies. I wasn't really a believer, he admitted in a 1986 interview. Now he and his family were living in constant fear in their own home. So why didn't the Smurls just pack up and leave earlier? For one, financial constraints played a role. They couldn't easily afford to abandon their home, and as Janet would later point out, it wasn't clear that leaving would help. The family feared the presence might follow them wherever they went. In fact, during their brief attempt to escape the tension, the Smurls went on a camping trip, only to have the entity seemingly come along for the ride. They described hearing loud banging on the walls of their camper, and feeling it rock violently as they tried to drive away. Even under the open sky, their invisible tormentor was there. The Smurls felt trapped, both by the demon in their midst and by the skepticism they feared they'd face if they told others. For a long time, they suffered in silence, afraid to sleep under their own roof, as each night promised new terrors. By early 1986, after roughly 18 months of intensifying torment, Jack and Janet Smurl reached a breaking point. Desperate for help, they turned not to the local Ghostbusters or a movie priest, but to a real-life husband and wife team known for tackling cases of the paranormal, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens, self-taught demonologists and founders of the New England Society for Psychic Research, had gained fame for their involvement in cases like the Amityville Horror. If anyone would believe the Smurls and attempt to help, it would be the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine arrived at the Smurl home in January 1986 to investigate. Lorraine Warren was a clairvoyant, and as she walked through the house, she purportedly discerned that multiple entities were present. Her conclusion was startling. The Smurls, she said, were sharing their home with 4 spirits. 3 were human spirits, the ghost of an elderly woman, the spirit of a younger woman, possibly violent or troubled, and the ghost of a man whom Lorraine believed had suffered and died in the house decades ago. These might have been benign on their own, but Lorraine said they were under the influence of a 4th entity, a demon. This demonic presence, she believed, was the mastermind, using the other 3 spirits to destroy the Smurl family. In other words, the lesser spirits were essentially puppets of a central evil force determined to drive the Smurls out or break them down. Ed Warren didn't just rely on Lorraine's impressions. He actively tried to provoke and document the phenomenon. On the first night of their investigation, Ed led the family in a group prayer and also employed what he called religious provocation. He invoked the name of Jesus Christ and brandished a crucifix, holy water, and holy oil in the home. The effect was dramatic. I did not have to wait moments when the very thing I felt was a drop in temperature of at least 30-some degrees. Ed later recounted. Then a dark mass formed about 3 feet in front of me. There was a sound in back of me rattling around. Ed watched as furniture began to shake. Items atop a bureau jumped and tumbled off, and the mattress in the master bedroom started bouncing up and down wildly. Still, Ed was convinced by what he encountered. The Smurls are truly a family coming under a visual attack, he told a reporter. The ghost devil demon, or whatever you call it, is in that home. He described the entity as very powerful and intelligent and very dangerous, capable of inflicting real harm. According to Ed, the demon had grown progressively stronger through the years, feeding perhaps on the family's fear and turmoil, and wasn't going to surrender easily. The Warrens spent months investigating the Smurl haunting in 1986. Ed claimed to have gathered audio recordings of the phenomena, tapes that captured unexplained knocks, rappings, and even a voice or two from the ether. He even said a demon left a message on a mirror, scrawled out telling them to get out. The Warrens also brought in other paranormal researchers and worked with the Smurls to perform repeated prayers and exorcism rites in the home. One priest from out of state his name was not made public, was brought in at the Warrens' behest and attempted a formal exorcism of the home. The priest performed 3 exorcisms over the course of 1986, but each time the demon seemingly resisted. Janet Smurl later said the demon evaded the exorcisms by slipping next door. Remember, this was a duplex. Whenever holy rites were performed in one side of the house, the entity even followed the family outside. Remember, this was a duplex. Whenever holy rites were performed in one side of the house, the entity even followed the family outside. Janet recounted how during one attempted exorcism, as the Smurls fled in their camper trailer, loud banging struck the camper roof and it began to shake violently, as if the demon rode on top. Despite these harrowing experiences, the Warrens believed there was hope. They encouraged the Smurls to keep fighting spiritually. Ed Warren later reflected that there's something in this home which has the intelligence to inflict physical and psychological harm upon this family. A sobering assessment, but the Warrens would not abandon the Smurls. They organised prayer sessions, advised the family to surround themselves with blessed objects, and continued to seek a permanent solution. Yet by mid-1986, none of these efforts had banished the entity. The Smurl haunting showed no signs of letting up. Feeling cornered, the Smurl family made a controversial choice. They decided to go public with their story. It was a step they had resisted a long time. After all, who would readily announce to the world that their house was infested by demons? But Jack and Janet were exhausted and felt they had run out of options. If the church's exorcisms hadn't succeeded yet, maybe publicity would attract someone who knew how to help, or at least put pressure on the church to take more action. In the summer of 1986, they opened their doors to the media, and what happened next was something they never expected. In August 1986, the Smurl haunting exploded into the public eye, unleashing a media circus on the quiet streets of West Pittston. Once the story broke in the local press, it quickly spread to national news outlets and tabloid headlines. Reporters and camera crews flocked to Chase Street, turning the Smurl home into a spectacle. After the Smurls went public, their story became a media phenomenon, gone viral the old-fashioned way. Through print and television, wrote one local journalist. CNN, CBS News, and even crews from as far away as Germany showed up with their cameras rolling. The National Enquirer splashed the Smurl story as an exclusive on its pages in September 1986, and TV talk shows like Larry King Live and Entertainment Tonight interviewed the family about their nightmare. For the Smurls, the attention was a double-edged sword. On one hand, they finally had people listening. Priests, paranormal investigators, and demonologists from across the country were now aware of their plight. On the other hand, their home turned into a tourist attraction and a target for gawkers. Crowds gathered day and night, hoping to catch a glimpse of something ghostly or just to be part of the buzz. Neighbours found their normally peaceful street clogged with curious onlookers and news vans. One neighbour, Bill Watson, later described the chaos. Everything got out of control. CNN was here on my porch. There was a camera crew from Germany in my driveway. There were so many people I could hardly get my car out to get to work. Thrill seekers would cruise by the house, and some even camped out on the lawn or peered in windows at night. The Smurl family suddenly felt like zoo exhibits. They reported that strangers would knock on their windows, and even throw bricks at their house in cruel pranks. Law enforcement had to keep an eye on the area to prevent trespassing. What was supposed to be a call for help had become, in Janet's words, something like a carnival attraction. Exactly what they didn't want while battling an alleged demon. The intense publicity did succeed in drawing more support from some corners. Notably, Reverend Joseph Adonisio, the pastor of the family's church, organised prayer vigils for the Smurls. He would later say that only fervent prayer seemed capable of curbing the evil. More on that soon. Even a Hollywood figure got involved. Actor Jason Miller, famous for playing Father Karras in The Exorcist, visited the Smurl home out of concern. Miller didn't outright endorse the demonic explanation, but after speaking with the family, he believed something was happening in that house, and he shared the Smurl's fear that the infestation, whatever its cause, would eventually get to the family. However, alongside support came a wave of skepticism and ridicule. The Smurl haunting quickly became a hot topic for paranormal debunkers and journalists who questioned the whole affair. Front and centre was Dr. Paul Kurtz, a renowned skeptic and then chairman of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. Kurt was openly dubious about the Warrens' involvement and the Smurls' claims. He argued that Ed and Lorraine Warren were not objective, independent, or impartial investigators, noting that they had no credentials in the scientific or parapsychological communities. In Kurtz's assessment, the whole Smurl family ordeal is a hoax, a charade, a ghost story. He even bluntly labelled the claims as mishmash. To Kurtz and others at the CSICOP, the Smurl case bore the hallmarks of something like the infamous Amityville Horror, a situation where, they suspected, the story was fueled more by imagination and publicity than reality. Kurtz proposed more mundane explanations, those awful smells, perhaps a broken sewer or plumbing issue. Something smelly yet perfectly natural could be the culprit. The strange sounds and bumps, possibly pranks, an overactive imagination, or even outright fabrication. He also raised questions about the family's medical history. It turned out that Jack Smurl had undergone brain surgery in 1983, a few years before the events hit their peak. Jack had needed an operation to remove a buildup of fluid on the brain because it was causing memory problems. Kurtz seized on this detail, suggesting that hallucinations or neurological issues might explain Jack's experiences. Other paranormal researchers piled on. Stephen Kaplan, a self-styled vampirologist and ghost researcher from New York, pronounced the case a likely hoax as soon as he heard about it. And in October 1986, the famous mentalist, the amazing Kreskin, George Friesk, came to town to challenge the Smurl claims. In a showy public demonstration, Kreskin performed a series of tricks to show how haunted house effects could be faked. Before a live audience, he had people concentrate on violent thoughts, and right on cue, a table levitated and crashed to the floor, spilling a glass of water. In another feat, a block of wood seemingly moved on its own. Kreskin didn't reveal his methods, but his point was made. Things that go bump in the night can have perfectly natural or cleverly contrived causes. He insinuated that the Smurls' experiences might be nothing more than illusions. Amid this backlash, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Scranton took a cautious stance. Church officials said they were taking the family's claims seriously. The family is telling the truth as they see it, but we don't know what's causing the disturbances, admitted Reverend Gerald Mullally, the diocesan chancellor. The local bishop's representatives brought in a theologian, Reverend of Bonnis Troubled, of St. Bonaventure University, to investigate whether there could be a less demonic explanation. Several priests visited the home to bless it, and none of them observed anything overtly supernatural during their stays. One priest even moved into the Smurl house for a few days in 1986, hoping to witness the phenomena firsthand. He stayed for 2 nights, and reportedly nothing stirred, not a single unnerving incident, so he left as unconvinced as he came. The media also questioned the Smurls' motives. Not long after going public, the family, with the help from Ed and Lorraine Warren and a local writer, Robert Curran, agreed to author a book about their story, titled The Haunted. The paperback was released in late 1986, mere months after the initial news broke. To some observers, the quick book deal looked suspicious, as if the Smurls might have concocted the whole drama for fame or money. Reviewers of The Haunted were largely unimpressed. A staff writer for a local paper panned it as a one-sided account, criticising the author for taking the Smurls' claims at face value and forsaking journalistic rigour. Another reviewer remarked that the book was poorly written and noted the complete lack of any empirical or physical evidence to support the story. These criticisms echoed what many skeptics were saying. No matter how sincere the Smurls might appear, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and that proof was lacking. Under such hostile scrutiny, the Smurl family felt themselves under attack in a whole new way. Now they weren't just fighting an invisible demon, they were defending their honour and sanity to the world. Janet Smurl vented her frustration in one interview. "I know what people must think, that we're crazy, but 8 people live in this house. 8 people have experienced this. 8 people are not crazy." By 8, she meant herself, Jack, their 4 daughters, and Jack's parents, all of whom, Janet insisted, have witnessed aspects of the haunting. 8 people are not hallucinating the same thing, she argued. The family steadfastly denied any accusations of a hoax. Years later, one of the Smurl daughters, Karen, affirmed, "We never made any money from the book or the movie. Who would want to go through all that media and public bashing? To the naysayers, I hope it doesn't take something as extreme as what we went through to make them believers." By the end of 1986, the Smurl case had reached a crescendo. The constant media exposure was wearing the family down. "We want peace and quiet," Janet told reporters, expressing a wish that life could return to normal. In late October of that year, a hopeful sign came from the Smurls' own church. Reverend Joseph Andonisio, who had been counselling the family spiritually, announced to the press that the Smurls' intense faith and the support of the community might have finally turned the tide. "Prayers have chased the foul smells and violent demons from the West Pittston home," Father Andonisio said, crediting a network of prayer groups that had been praying on the Smurls' behalf. "We believe the elimination of our problem can only be credited to the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, St. Michael the Archangel, and the Sacred Heart of Jesus, who have answered our prayers and the prayers of thousands of others. The Smurls were devout believers that faith and prayer warfare could beat back the darkness." Indeed, for a time in late 1986, it seemed things did calm down in the Smurl house. The horrifying stench faded, the walls stopped thumping in the night. and the family reported being able to sleep undisturbed for the first time in years. The respite was credited to a combination of factors: the Warrens' intervention, the multiple exorcisms, though unsuccessful in fully expelling the demon, perhaps they weakened it, and the collective prayers of many on the Smurls' behalf. The Smurls continued to do their part, praying the rosary together nightly, and placing holy objects in every room as a protective shield. It wasn't a total victory just yet. In 1987, Janet Smurl admitted that some phenomena lingered. She and the girls would still occasionally hear inexplicable knocking in the walls, and shadowy shapes would flit at the corners of their vision. But crucially, nothing they couldn't handle, she said. The oppressive atmosphere had lightened. After over a decade in that duplex, the Smurl family decided it was time to move and leave the ghosts or demons of Chase Street behind. In February 1987, they put the house up for sale. By the end of that year, the Smurls had quietly relocated to a new home in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, a short distance away. For anyone hoping that moving would end the story, there was a final twist. Supernatural phenomena reportedly followed the Smurls to their new house, at least briefly. The family claimed that soon after moving in, a black mass, looking just like the shadowy form from their old home, manifested in the new house, as if to say it wasn't done with them yet. Janet and Jack must have felt an icy dread seeing that form again. Fortunately, this time, they took swift action. In 1988, after the lingering activity continued, the Smurls managed to secure a church-sanctioned exorcism by an official Catholic exorcist. Accounts vary on the exact timing, but by 1989, a final exorcism was performed. One source described it as a particularly long and grueling rite. This fourth exorcism, if counting the earlier unsanctioned attempts, seemed to do the trick. After 1989, Jack and Janet Smurl reported no further paranormal disturbances in their lives. At long last, their family was free from the haunting that had made the headlines around the world. So, spooky stuff going on. Do you know, because I'm a bit of a dizzy person sometimes, I didn't realise that this is the story that the new Conjuring film is all about.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. Have you watched The Conjurings? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think like a few years ago.
Yeah. Which ones have you seen? I think there's 3 so far, isn't there?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. So the first one with the clapping in the house. I can't even think now. It's too hot. It's too hot for me to even think what the films are. The Enfield.
The stories like that with the horror films, they're all just the same to me. And I don't really remember what they're.
They all merge into one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some things that are just different though, innit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
I like the Conjuring films though. I think they're pretty good. And the new ones. Yeah, the new one's out next month. So I should be watching that for sure, because it does look very spooky from the trailer. But yeah, the Smurl family, I'm glad it's all stopped now for them. I was looking at pictures of them, as well, from the 70s, 80s, I think must have been. And they looked like a pretty unassuming family that had a lot of stuff go on, and then the media jumped all over it. That's the worst bit, I think. The media terrorising people.
Yeah.
And all of the other people come out of the woodwork because they want to see a haunted house. And I can't deny that I might have been there in the bushes taking a look as well. If it happened down the road, I probably would have been in the bushes watching.
Well, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. I'll catch you again tomorrow for the Obscurata episode, Wednesday for the Reddit episode. Toby will be back again on Thursday for the extra. And then we also have the Obscurata episode and then Sunday for the haunted episode. It's a bit of a mouthful now saying all that.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.